Okay, let's examine what we have. We're going to bring our piston up to TDC. Of course, TDC isn't exactly TDC, so you know what I mean. So what we want to see is our 1 mark. There it is. Right there. It's got some oil on it. But we want to see where we carved 1 in it. Or not carved, but you know, scraped a 1 in it. So we know that's up. So that's correct. Then we're going to have a look at this. Bring this back. I'm going to have a look at this connecting rod. And we're going to see a 1 on the rod, and then we're going to see a 1 on the cap. We've got a good gap there, which is nothing. It's centered on the crank correctly. I've got those nuts snugged up. I'm going to go get some torque values. Okay, so our rod is up, our cap is up. We have our greased bearing in there, and it operates pretty smooth. I don't hear any binding. I don't hear any gouges or anything like that. It's pretty smooth. Now, think about this. You've got 5 1/4-inch rings running on that cylinder. So that's an 1.5 inch band on that cylinder, on that ring. So that's going to cause a lot of friction. Multiply that times 2. So you've got 2.5 inches of ring surface dragging on those cylinders. So it's going to turn relatively hard, but it's not going to be binding. The starter is going to be able to roll this over, and I think we should be alright. Now I'm going to work on our other cylinder and connecting rod. I had a little trouble. You have to move the crank to the right place, reach down in there and push that bearing in place with your fingers, making sure you get the bearing lined up into the crank or into the rod correctly. And then I had to grease it. I had to do this all blindly while just feeling. So you should be able to do it. And then once I got it on there, I lifted the rod up into place and I brought the crank around to the rod like that. And then the rod was on. I put the cap on, tightened it down. Of course, I used my assembly lube while putting this together. So you want to use your assembly lube. The ring compressor worked famously. I had a small block of wood because the hammer end wouldn't work very well, so I took a small block of wood and put it on the piston and drove it in. Of course, you know, since everything was lined up and everything was right, we didn't scratch the cylinder or break any rings or anything like that. So let me get this other one in there and we'll see how it looks.